We, the citizens of America, are now joined in a great national effort to rebuild our country and restore its promise for all of our people. Because today, we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people.
Greetings, friends and fellow citizens. This is Tom Zawistowski. I am the host of the We the People Convention News and Opinion radio program and podcast. I'm also the president of the We the People Convention.org. And I want to, thank you for joining us for this week's show. Wow, what a week it's been. That's all I can say. It's been pretty wild. And I want to start the show by really seriously thanking all of you who've written emails to me, who've made phone calls and talked to me, who've shared information and data that was helpful to me, that encouraged me to keep up the fight. I got to tell you, it's been a pretty lonely month, because for a long time, I really felt like I was the only voice of reason in Ohio standing up and fighting against this insanity that's going on in our country. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, where there's just no critical thought going on and things that are happening, they're just terrible. But I want to welcome you to the show. If you're new to the show, this is a news summary, a weekly news summary show. So what you're going to hear me do today is we're going to kind of just try to focus in on the things that most affect you and me and our country and all of us. And then we're going to talk about things that you and I have to do to help protect and defend our individual freedom and liberty and prosperity. Because, boy, it's certainly under attack. Certainly under attack. If you want to see how your prosperity is under attack, go look at your 401k if you've got one. It's devastating, and it's really unfortunate that we've kind of been through this terrible period of time, and we're still not out of danger. And we're gonna talk a lot about that. But thank you for joining us, and thank you for telling other people about this show. The show is growing. You can watch it on the radio in Ohio. We're on 5 radio stations every Saturday morning. You can go to wethepeopleconvention.org to see which stations we're on and what times we're on, and actually get links to listen to them on your phone as well as over the air. We can listen to us on Roku. You watch the video of our podcast on Roku TV, on Amazon Fire TV, on YouTube, on our website at wethepeopleconvention.org. We're on iTunes. You can get us a million different ways. And we sure appreciate the people who take the time to tune in, because this information is really important and really helpful to you and really helpful to our nation. So, let's get to the big dog. Let's get right into it, because it's all about the coronavirus, right? It's all about the coronavirus. And, I really think the most important thing to talk about is perspective. What I'm most upset about is the complete and total lack of perspective when people are talking about the coronavirus, and particularly the media, particularly the news media. It's just egregious. It's really something that's damaging to you. So here's the latest stats of the day I'm doing this show. There's 669,000 cases in the United States, 1,054 deaths, and in Ohio there's 704 cases. I think I might have an update on that. There's 867 cases in Ohio, and there are 223 people hospitalized and 15 deaths. Now, when I say perspective, what I'm trying to talk to you about from perspective is that they don't put numbers with those numbers to help them make any sense. So when you're talking about, there's 69,000 people in the United States that have the coronavirus that have confirmed. Do you understand that there's 31 million people that have had the flu already? Do you understand that? Okay, there's 330 million people in the United States, and they never compare that to the 69,000. It's important. It gives you perspective. For instance, there's the big news flash today. 500,000 cases in the world. 500,000 people in the world have been diagnosed with having the coronavirus. That's out of 7.7 billion people. That's not even significant. And I know every life is significant. I know that we care about life, but you got to have a broader perspective. So 22,334 deaths worldwide from this. You know how many died from the swine flu in 2008 and 2009 worldwide? 284,000. 284,000. And this has been going on now for like 5 months. And we're getting into the summer where this is going to change, right? And the virus is going to have a hard time getting through the warmer months. That's pretty evident. So where's the perspective? And the answer is there is no perspective. Here's a match. If you're on the video, on the podcast, I'm showing a map right now of coronavirus, breakouts in the United States. And the most important thing for you on the radio to understand is the whole map's almost empty. There's cases in every state, but in most states there's onesies or twosies. It's hardly anything. It's hardly anything. I'm not saying this is insignificant. What I'm saying is it is nowhere near as significant as the people in our government have made it, and I'm going to prove it to you right this second. Guess what happened today? Yeah, the epidemiologist behind the highly cited coronavirus model, right? Remember the thing that came out a couple of weeks ago? I talked to you about it last week, the Imperial College of London coronavirus model, which has been cited by organizations like the New York Times and has been instrumental in government policy decisions, making just a massive impact on decision making, on all these shutdowns, and all these businesses, and all this unemployment that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. Well, guess what? Epidemiologist Neil Ferguson, who created this model, has had second thoughts. In his model, a couple weeks ago, he predicted 2.2 million dead in the US and 500,000 dead in the UK. Yeah, he just revised his model. He's now saying that the deaths in the UK will not be 500,000, it'll be below 20,000. Below 20,000. It's all a bunch of hooey. And this is what everybody was depending on, and I'm going to talk about that later when we talk about Ohio. This is what's wrong. There's no perspective. And there's been not enough people like you and I, the people who watch this show, who stood up and challenged this and just said, how can there be 100,000 cases in Ohio when there aren't 100,000 in the world outside of China? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And it's all about big government and all about what they're going to do to protect you. But listen to me. I said last week, I don't want a single person to lose their job or their business or their education to protect me, to save my life. Because you know what? It's my job and it's your job to protect your life, to do the right things, to wash your hands, to stay a safe distance. If you have a medical condition, to stay home, to stay away from people until this passes. It's about personal responsibility. And no one wants to talk about that. In all these dictates that you get from the governor and from even the staff that President Trump has on the coronavirus task force, they're not making you take responsibility for your own life. And that's the American way. That's the American way. So, coronavirus. We're hearing things in New York that it's starting to fade. I'm going to show you that the whole scare here in Ohio was bogus. We should never shut down anything. Okay? And we're going to get through this. But we aren't going to commit economic suicide. And you played a role in that this week. And we're going to talk about that next. But right now, we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion podcast and radiocast, and I'm Tom Zawistowski, and I'm sure glad you joined us.
As Merrick, president of Liberty Camp for Kids in Portage County, Ohio. Liberty Camp for Kids is where students in grades 1 through 6 experience the founding of our nation. This year's camp will be held from July 20th through the 24th from 9 till noon. The cost is $30 per camper. If you're interested in our camp, being a volunteer, or even starting one of your own, go to www.libertycampforkids.com.
Buckeye Firearms Association is Ohio's #1 gun rights organization, protecting the rights of Ohio's 4 million gun owners. And you can get our weekly gun rights newsletter free. Receive breaking news and urgent alerts on gun laws. Stay up to date on self-defense and shooting sports. Discover pro-gun activities and events near you. Get your free gun rights newsletter now at bfanews.org. That's bfanews.org. bfanews.org.
All right, and we're back, and we're glad you're with us. I also wanted to thank everyone, if I didn't in the previous segment, who've made donations to the WeThePeopleConvention.org. We got donations this week from people. I don't even know how you know about us. And if you want to donate, you can do it on your phone. You can text to me. You can text the word freedom to 22525. Text freedom to 22525 and give $5 per month for freedom. That will help us pay for our emails, pay for this radio show, pay for the fight that we are fighting for our individual freedom and liberty and prosperity. You can also go to our website, wethepeopleconvention.org, and give as well. So please do that. Okay, so let's start at where the show left us last week. Last week, I took Governor DeWine to task because of not just what he was doing, because I challenged his data. I thought that this Dr. Acton didn't know what she was talking about, and I challenged how they were doing things. I challenged the fact that the governor was making these decisions to close schools, to close restaurants, and giving people no time. Just saying, I decided on Sunday afternoon, 3:00, you're closed at 9:00 tonight. And I told them how wrong that was and how disrespectful that was. So on Saturday last week, after our podcast, Governor DeWine then started to talk about some other things he wanted to do. And by Sunday, he decided to close non-essential businesses, and he decided to basically tell us that we have to stay at home. Okay. And my point to Governor DeWine was that there was just no reason to shut down our government, because at that point they had been projecting that there was 100,000 cases in Ohio. And after 6 weeks, there were only 247. So I just started calling Governor DeWine Chicken Little, because he was saying the sky is falling, and we're saying the sky wasn't falling. And so I put out a news release. I put out an email, which you should be getting. If you're not getting, go to wethepeopleconvention.org and go to the front page. Just put in your email address and your zip code, and you'll start getting the emails. But I put out an email that said, that the evidence just isn't there. There aren't enough, people that are sick. And when we're concerned about overflowing our hospitals, we're just in the situation where even today we only have like 158 cases. Well, with the flu, in 2017 and 18, we had almost 18,000 people hospitalized for the flu. And there was no stories about the hospitals couldn't handle it, and there was no shutdowns, and there's no panics, and that was 70 times more people. And then I talked to the governor about the fact that they keep comparing us to Italy and to New York. And you can't do that, because we're not Italy, we're not New York. Just look at the land mass in Ohio. You want to talk about social distancing, right? We're naturally spread apart, and so the disease isn't going to spread as much. So we tried to convince the governor that he should not shut down the government, but of course he continued to do that. Now I will tell you though that we knew that we had an effect on the governor, because we saw that he was, I told you that I took him to task for just saying, we're closing right now. And what he did on Sunday is he ended up saying, well, this is not going to happen until Monday night. So he gave people some time. So I felt like he was finally starting to listen to us a little bit, but boy, it was really it just kept getting more egregious. And this is on top of canceling the election, which we're going to talk about a little bit more here. So then that was Sunday afternoon, and that night, something really important happened. If you get my emails, if you go to the website, you will see that Steve Hilton, who's on a thing called The Next Revolution on Fox Television, he came out and just basically let it out. He basically went on a rant about how insane this shutdown of our economy is and why is nobody doing anything about it. Here's a quick little cut from that video, which you can see on WeThePeopleConvention.org.
He loves entrepreneurs. He loves America's small businesses and farmers and all the workers who rely on them for a living and to support their families. So this economic curve we're about to take a nosedive on, it is not just about money. It's about the heart and soul of this country. In the hours ahead, let's make sure the congressional stimulus package doesn't miss the target. Part of it will be spent sending a check to every American on April the 6th and another on May the 18th. But by April the 6th, hundreds of thousands of businesses will have closed and millions of people will be unemployed. Worse, it will be those with the most precarious lives, least able to cope. By May, my God, millions of businesses will go under and tens of millions will be unemployed. Look, more money is always welcome for hard-pressed Americans, but this is not about stimulus, it's about survival.
So you can see that that he was pretty fired up. And right after that, like a couple hours after he went on that rant, Donald Trump did a tweet. I think it was like at 11 o'clock at night. And Donald Trump said, we cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself. At the end of the 15-day period, we will make a decision as to which way we want to go. Bingo. Bango, that's what we had all been hoping for, that the president would finally have the light come on and understand that while the medical professionals, all they're focused on is the medical part, he needed to focus on the economic damage. And so we jumped in, you and I jumped in. And what did we do? I sent out emails, I sent out phone calls on Monday morning because I had heard directly from the White House by people that I know in DC that they were starting to pick up that Trump was finally losing his base, that the people that supported Trump who were now going to be unemployed and who were now going to have their businesses ruined, well, why would they even vote, let alone vote for President Trump if this happened? So I was able to get information that we had been putting out to Governor DeWine into the hands of people who could present it to President Trump, along with people from all the other states. And it became clear that if President Trump did not get us back to work, he was going to lose the next election because we would have been decimated. So here, now put the dots together, okay? So Steve Hilton says, hey, this is nuts. President Trump does the tweet. We get to talk to the White House Monday morning. I asked you to start calling the White House and demanding that he put us back to work that afternoon. And then what happens? He pivots. Trump has in his press conference, he comes back and he says, we have to open our country and get people back to work. And so let me just take a little piece of that video, okay, and just play a segment of that.
Far the most ever. The number of jobs, almost 160 million. So we can't turn that off and think it's going to be wonderful. There'll be tremendous repercussions. There will be a tremendous death from that. Death. You're talking about death. Probably more death from that than anything that we're talking about with respect to the virus.
So there was President Trump finally pivoting and saying more people are going to die from the economic impact than from the virus. And I talked to you last week about the guy, the economist, who said that if we go down this path where we were going to shut down these businesses for 3 or 4 months, that the global GDP would be cut in half. And I explained to you, millions of people would die. Millions! Tens of millions would starve to death if that happened. It made no sense. It was crazy. But here's what happened now. Put the dots together again. Starting to sound like Dan Bongino here. Sorry about that. But put the dots together again. What happened on Sunday night? On Sunday night, the Senate was discussing this massive multi-trillion-dollar bailout, or stimulus, right? And Nancy Pelosi blew it up. Why? Why did she blow it up? Because their polling was showing what we told Trump on Monday morning, that the base was going to leave Trump. That is what the Democrats, the Democratic Socialists have been wanting all along, whether it's from, the Russiagate, the Mueller probe, Stormy Daniels, Ukraine phone call. They couldn't separate us from Trump. But that's what was starting to happen if we went down this path. Don't get me wrong, we didn't leave him yet, but we were concerned that he was going to be led down this path that the Democrats and the media wanted to lead Trump down to this economic suicide. And thanks to your phone calls, we blew up their plan. It was awesome. And then another important thing happened on Monday, okay? Because I had been out just beating on Governor DeWine, saying, you can't do this. You can't continue to keep our businesses shut down. The data you've got does not justify these actions. And then Dave Zanotti from the American Policy Roundtable jumped in and put out a big release on Monday that really backstopped me. So now I wasn't alone. You and I weren't alone. We weren't alone. The American Policy Roundtable joined us. And he said, public health in the state of Ohio is being rocked by more than the COVID-19 virus, said Dave Zanotti, CEO of the Ohio Roundtable and the American Policy Roundtable. The health and welfare of Ohioans is threatened by a series of directives issued by the Ohio Department of Health. While Dr. Acton and Governor DeWine clearly care about the health of Ohioans, their singular focus on flattening the curve has created a crisis for millions of Ohioans. The pattern of arbitrarily punishing Ohio businesses and families who are sacrificing to do the right thing has strained the credibility of this entire process. The ODH has treated Ohio businesses as if they are the problem here. These businesses and the people they employ are the only ones who will be paying the bills to solve this virus. Thank you, Dave Zanotti. Thank you to the American Policy Roundtable for stepping up and calling for Governor DeWine to stop the lockouts, put us back to work. Well, Governor DeWine wasn't convinced yet, okay? I'm sorry to say he wasn't convinced yet. But I also had been saying throughout all the press releases I did this week and all the ones I've done in the previous weeks, that what Governor DeWine was doing was in fact illegal. And what Dr. Acton was doing was absolutely illegal. There is no case, there is no legal standing for what the governor was doing. So we got another bit of help that was really important. Maurice Thompson at the 1851 Center for Constitutional Law, who's been, he's been in the battle with us in the Tea Party for the entire 11 years I've been involved. He's been involved longer, but he's a very bright lawyer and he understands, liberty and freedom. And he helped us with the Ohio Healthcare Freedom Amendment, and he's helped a lot of our groups around the state. And Maurice Thompson put out a document that basically said, what is the law? Okay, what is the law that's at stake here? And it says, delegating ultimate authority to bureaucrats violates separation of powers. To justify their flurry of orders, the governor and state health department rely on revised code 3701.13. However, while the Ohio Constitution vests the General Assembly alone with emergency powers, even that authority is limited to enemy attacks, and the General Assembly certainly cannot transfer its powers to legislate on major policy issues to just one politically unaccountable administrative agency, meaning the legislature couldn't even give Dr. Acton the power she exercised to cancel our election if they wanted to. Okay, it goes on, to say other things like, neither the Ohio Department of Health or the governor can cancel or schedule an election. That is solely up to the legislature. Ohioans maintain the right to access and use their properties. You can go in and out of your house if you want. And Ohioans maintain the right to labor freely without restraint, meaning that Governor DeWine's issuing his edicts, you got to close your business, you can't leave your house. He doesn't have the power to do that. It's not legal. And to get Maurice Thompson and the 1851 Center to come out and say that was really important because it legitimized what I was saying, okay? It legitimized what I was saying. So the next thing that happened was that I just could not believe that we were going through this process of shutting down these businesses and no one was asking fundamental questions. I mean, just, again, if you were going to do that, for instance, of Dr. Acton, okay? Here she is. We're now 6 weeks into this, and she can't answer the basic questions. For instance, how many total individuals have been tested for coronavirus in Ohio as of today? How many of those tests have been negative? Why are you not reporting this information to the CDC? Your report says that 564 people in Ohio have tested positive. What is the percentage of total tests does that number represent? So I had sent this press release out that said 20 questions that must be answered on Wednesday's press conference. And they got that. And Dr. Acton tried to answer these questions, and she really couldn't. They haven't done the testing. She doesn't have any idea. They don't know how many people have the regular flu in our state, let alone have the coronavirus. It's totally based on zero information. But here's the more egregious part for Governor DeWine. Listen to these questions, okay? Governor DeWine, since you have ordered all non-essential businesses in Ohio to close, how many businesses is that in Ohio exactly? He has no idea, folks. He closed businesses without even bothering to look what he was doing. So I put a figure out. I said there are approximately 227,339 small businesses in Ohio, and it's projected that 50%, or 113,670 of these businesses will close permanently under your orders, Governor. How can you justify your destructive actions based on the lack of cases and deaths in Ohio? And then how many employees work at those businesses, Governor? He has no idea. As of December 2019, 5,598,000 people were working in Ohio. That's just this December, okay? And it is estimated at least 25% of those workers are now unemployed. Is it true that the deaths of 8 people, and now it's like 14 people, and the hospitalizations of 145 justifies your taking away the income of 1,389,950 Ohioans? I think not. I hope you think not. Couple more questions. Don't want to beat this to death. You can see this at wethepeopleconvention.org. You'll see an article that says questions that must be answered. How much total income will be lost by the employees of these companies in the next 2 weeks from your actions? We are sure you calculated this number before deciding to take this money away from citizens of Ohio, right? Of course not. They didn't. So I did some math. If the average wage for those 1,389,950 employees is $17 per hour, and I got that from a government website, and they worked even 32 hours per week, they would lose $544 per week without unemployment, which could take weeks to get. That totals $1.5 billion in lost wages in 2 weeks. $1.5 billion. Then I asked them, what is the average loss of income to each of these employees? Share with us your calculations on the economic damages to these individuals and families you feel is justified by this fake crisis. Literally, folks, fake crisis. And we're going to talk about that next. Think about that. Think about you're going to hurt. You're going to take away the livelihoods of 1.5 million Ohioans. And you didn't even think to figure out who they were or how much you were taking. You just did it based on a doctor's opinion that is clearly irrational. So, and so let's talk about that. So on Thursday, I released a video that basically finally drives a nail in the fact that Dr. Acton has been misinforming, has been telling Governor DeWine the bad information from day one. See, none of us could figure out why in God's name would Mike DeWine do something this crazy? And why are all the other governors doing it? And there's an article that you should go back on our website and look at, okay, where I talk about Trump, has pivoted. And I tell you what's going on. I tell you about the herd mentality and political correctness and about the social media bullying and how we've stopped leaders from leading because they're afraid to stand up and say, whoa, okay? Governor DeWine has been panicked. And I use that word and people are like, you're calling him Chicken Little and you're calling him panicked because he is. He is Chicken Little. He thought the acorn was the sky falling and it wasn't. And he was panicked because he thought we were going to have, I don't know what she told him. I think he thought we're going to have 500,000 deaths in Ohio, as ridiculous as that is. Because no sane person would do that. But they were all lies. Well, I'm not going to call it lies. Lies mean you know it's wrong and you tell them. They weren't lies. Dr. Acton isn't a liar. She's just ignorant. She's just ill-informed. And she's unqualified, and she needs to go. And so here's what I put out in this video today that's gone absolutely crazy viral, okay? It's all over Facebook, YouTube, everywhere. And if you go to our website, you'll see that Dr. Bricks has basically proved that Dr. Acton was telling Mike DeWine bad information from day one. Here's a clip from that video.
That I was very convinced we had community spread, and even though we didn't have the testing, I was already seeing that. Now, the 1% number actually came for me, and I did go through the math before, but it came from working backwards from what we knew at that time, which is 40 to 70% of all of us will get this virus in the course of a year. Those numbers, I've seen 56% in one study, and that's varying, but that is the best of science at the time. And I also knew when we would start to peak.
When you got to those projections that said, like in Germany and others, that implied that 60% or 50% of the population would get infected, I want to be very clear, the only way that happens is this virus remains continuously moving through populations in this cycle, in the fall cycle, and another cycle. So that's through 3 cycles with nothing being done. The numbers that have been put out there are actually very frightening to people. But I can tell you, if you go back and look at Wuhan and Hubei and all of these provinces, when they talk about 60,000 people being infected, even if you said, oh, right, well, there's asymptomatics and all of that, so you get to 600,000 people out of 80 million. That is nowhere close to the numbers that you see people putting out there. I think it has frightened the American people. I think on a model that you just run full out, you can get to those numbers if you have 0 controls and you do nothing. And we know that every American is doing something.
So, there you have it. Dr. Birx from the Trump's coronavirus task force. She's the blonde-haired lady that you see standing next to Trump. She's, about my age. She's in her 60s. She said what Dr. Acton has been telling Governor DeWine was wrong from the start. And I told you in the previous segment about the doctor that wrote the study in England. That's what Dr. Acton was being influenced by, and all these other people. It was never true. We have destroyed businesses. We have attacked individual citizens in our state, millions of them, for no reason, out of panic. And now, what do you got to do about that? What you and I have to do is we have to get the Ohio legislature to act. They are the ones who have the authority. They need to call Dr. Acton in and have hearings and make her prove what she's doing and have Governor DeWine in. And guess what? They need to say, Governor DeWine, there is no extending the shutdown unless we say so. I'm begging you. Call your Ohio House member, your Ohio Senate member, and demand that they represent us, because we just had a doctor, a woman that has no legal authority, just wave her hand last Sunday and say, you're all out of work. It doesn't get any crazier than that. And you got to defend your freedom and your liberty and your prosperity, because that's what they're taking from you. Don't just take it. Fight back. Call your legislators and demand it. Okay, got to take a little break so I can cool off a little bit. I get a little fired up here. Okay, so we're going to take a little break, and then we'll come back and cover up the rest of the show here. Let me find my thing. Here we go. We're going to take a little break. You're listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion radio show and podcast, and I'm Tom Zawistowski. You can view the We the People Convention News and Opinion podcast anytime you want, 24/7, 365 days per year, by just going to wethepeopleconvention.org. And then right on the front page, you'll see the podcast player. And if you click on the blue playlist, it'll show you all of our most recent podcasts. You can also find out by clicking on the yellow button on the front page and going to the We the People live podcast page of the website, how you can listen to the broadcast on Facebook or YouTube, on Roku TV or Amazon Fire TV, and get a complete list of our stations that broadcast our podcasts on the radio every Saturday morning, including a map with the Ohio stations indicated. So be sure to tune in when it's convenient for you. And if you have comments about the show, don't hesitate to write to us at info@wethepeopleconvention.org and tell us what you think about the show or what topics you'd like us to cover. All right, and we're back, and you're sure happy that you're with us. We hope that you will, go to the website and look at that information and help us out by getting more and more people to listen and listen to the radio show and listen to the podcast every week. We sure appreciate it. Let's start getting on now with some of the the other news that is affecting you and that we got to know about. So they finally did pass the $2 trillion stimulus package, I think at like 1 o'clock in the morning on Thursday or something like that. And I have mixed emotions about this, folks, but what you need to know about it is a couple things. Basically, in this, they've expanded unemployment benefits. So everyone collecting unemployment benefits will receive an additional $600 per week for the next 4 months after the new bill becomes law, meaning the average unemployment benefit will be roughly equal to the median wage. There's also a thing in here for American adults are going to get a refundable tax credit up to $1,200. That's for people making anywhere from like $75,000 down. Also, of course, there's all kinds of pork. There's aid to state and local governments. You got to love this, right? They're going to put us out of business. The people who work in government are going to say, we're shutting down your business for no reason at all. But in this bill, most states and localities have balanced budget requirements to prohibit their government from deliberately running a deficit even in tough economic times, which compels them to raise taxes or cut spending during recessions when doing the opposite would be far better for the economy. So we're going to give a bunch of money to state and local governments because we couldn't have them feel any of the pain, right? Yeah, we can't do that. I do want to talk to you, though. I had a conversation. I had asked for Congressman Anthony Gonzalez to talk with me, and he, by the way, just had his second child, Carolyn. They just had a daughter, and they've now got 2 kids, and congratulations to Anthony Gonzalez and his wife. So he couldn't join me on the call, but I did meet with his staff, and we talked. I was particularly interested about these SBA loans because I'm a businessman. I've been in business for 35 years. We own multiple businesses, and I know what it takes to stay in business. And I'm very concerned about all of you that have businesses. I think I've got good news, okay? Now, again, the stimulus to me, I would rather be back to work this Monday and not need a stimulus, right? That's the problem here. That's the problem here. We're doing this to ourselves. So now we're in this no man's land where, we're going to try to get back to work by Easter, which is what President Trump is saying. And we're doing some things to force Governor DeWine to do the same thing, because he actually said in the last press conference, he wants to go to May. Can't do it. Would destroy Ohio. We went to May. But here's the good news for you in business. I'm understanding very clearly that by next week, you're going to be able to go to the bank that your business checking accounts are with. And there's going to be a facility on their website where you are going to be able to just log in like you normally do. And it'll say apply for an SBA loan. And all you have to provide is your FICA, your payroll. What is my payroll? What is my rent or my mortgage, right? And what are my utility bills? And then your bank will process that. And then they will get a loan from the SBA, and they will electronically deposit that right in your bank account. And then if you pay your employees and you pay your mortgage and you keep doing that for this, the time that this stimulus bill goes, which is like a month or so, then if you do that, they're going to forgive those. They're not going to be loans. They're going to be grants. So that's going to keep you afloat. Don't panic. Talk to your local bank. This is happening, and I understand it. I think they can do that. See, I was like you thinking, we're going to go in and have to talk to a loan officer and show them financials on that. It would never work. The banks couldn't handle it. You couldn't handle it. Good news is it's going to be streamlined, it's going to be quick, and it's going to keep you in business. Don't give up your dreams. Keep fighting for your business. Don't let them take this away from you. Fight for your individual freedom and liberty, prosperity. The president worked hard to get this out of Congress without Nancy Pelosi and those guys getting their Christmas tree wish list. And it's one of the better things that's going to happen. So please do that, okay? And so here we go. What's the news this week? Unbelievable unemployment. Well, what a surprise. You close out all the businesses, you'd think you'd have unbelievable unemployment. So an avalanche of jobless claims added more than 3.28 million claims filed across the country just this week. And 187,000 Ohioans applied for unemployment benefits just this week. It's brutal. It's Ohio's record is higher than the numbers that we've ever seen. This is an all-time record for unemployment filings in a single week. Well, what do you expect? You just shut down all the businesses. See, but this is where the pain starts to come in. And this is where people start saying, I really do care about those elderly people, and I really want to do all these things, except you're killing me, and I can't die, okay? I got to fight for my life. And all of you who've been saying, Governor DeWine, just shut down everything. Yeah, well, you're older like me. You're on Social Security. It's no skin for you. Have a little compassion. Think about the younger generations. Because you're afraid you're going to get sick and die? The fact of the matter is, most of the people who are dying from this are going to die in the next year or so anyway. They've got already serious conditions. They're over 80. If you're afraid of your health, it's your personal responsibility. Don't destroy these young people's lives because you're afraid. And that goes for you, Governor DeWine, as well. So we got further complications, though. I just told you about the banks that I think it's going to work pretty well to get SBA loans. Not so much for you getting your workman's comp, right? Or unemployment. Why? Because the state agencies that handle unemployment checks are overwhelmed. So here's if you're watching the podcast, on the radio, there's a notice on the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services website saying we're experiencing slow processing times due to the high claims activity, which they caused. If you receive a confirmation number when you file your claim, your application will be processed as soon as possible. If you've already filed an application, no need to add the mass layoff number. Thank you for your patience. Yeah, all you folks who listen to this show, who are just tuning in the radio, all of you guys that think that, Democratic socialism is a good deal, that Bernie Sanders got it all right? That we want government health care. Government health care. Yeah. How's the CDC doing? How's the job they're doing? How's Dr. Acton doing? We want big government? Government isn't the solution. It's the problem. That's what Reagan said. That's what we know for a fact. That's what we know for a fact. Stop it. Individual liberty and freedom. That's what this nation is all about. That's why it's as great as it is, because government can't do what people can do. Speaking of which, and this is the last story, and then we'll wrap up the radio show. They're going to have the Ohio primary on April 28th. They finally announced it. Okay, the legislature, the governor who was saying it'd be June 2nd, and Frank LaRose, Secretary of State, who was saying it's going to be June 2nd, they have no say. They have no legal standing. They were wrong to cancel the election, and they should be criminally prosecuted. And so should Dr. Acton. But of course, our legislature is a bunch of wimps. Okay, and no one cares about the law except for you and I. We're the only ones who follow the law. They're above the law. But so here's the deal. It's going to be April 28th. We're going to finish our election on April 28th. It's going to be all mail-in except for people who are handicapped. There's a federal law that says you have to make voting available to handicapped people. So they're going to be able to drive up to the Board of Elections, and people are going to come out and give them a ballot, and they're going to fill it out. Other than that, it's all going to be by mail. Okay? Now, let's just do a reality check. So here's the problem that just drives me crazy. They had no right to cancel the election. All the legislature had to do was say, you had no right to do that, and guess what? The election is going to be next Tuesday. Go vote. No big deal. That's all you have to say. Why can't we say that? Because the king has no clothes. No one wants to tell DeWine that there's no crisis. So we got to pretend there's a crisis, right? We got to take away your ability to vote in person because of a pretend crisis, because 15 people have died in Ohio. Yeah, you know how many people have died in the 6 weeks in Ohio since the coronavirus thing? Yeah, 14,000. We're not canceling elections because of them, but 15 people. Whoa, right? So then it gets dumber than that. Let's get dumber than that. So they were originally going to have Frank LaRose, the Secretary of State, mail out to you an absentee ballot application. That would make sense. I texted Frank and said, Frank, why are you spending the money? Just have them put out at the post office. If you want to vote absentee, go to the post office. They'd have the forms. You could fill it out right there. Because remember, you got to fill out a form that says, send me an absentee ballot. That form isn't the ballot. You got to first send in a form and say, send me an absentee ballot, so they can mail it to your house, so they can legitimize that you're an eligible voter. So if you gave them out at the post office, you wouldn't have to pay for the postage to send them to people, and you'd save time because you'd fill it out and give it right to the postman. Oh, no. We can't do that because we're politicians and we're just brain dead. So what they're doing? They're going to spend $7 million of our money to mail everyone who hasn't voted yet this election. Okay, because remember, a bunch of people have already voted. We've already had 30 days of voting, right? They're going to mail everyone that hasn't voted a postcard. And on the postcard, it will say, the election's April 28th. You need to go to the Secretary of State or the Board of Elections website, print an application off your computer, right? What if you don't have a computer, right? How are you going to do that? Oh, I don't know. Now I got to go find a friend or whatever. You got to print it, fill it out, put it in your envelope, put your stamp on it, mail it to the Board of Elections. They're going to mail back a ballot to you. Then you got to fill that out and put it in an envelope and mail it back to the Board of Elections and have it there by April 28th so you can vote. Because we got to pretend there's a crisis and we can't go vote. And we're going to spend $7 million. And the turnout's going to be garbage. Now, there's one good, silver lining here, folks. And that is, if you're passionate about your candidate, if you know someone who's running who deserves to win and didn't have the money, because this is going to be a low turnout election, you can win. You can win by getting your people together who support that candidate, because it's kind of like what the school districts do, right? When they put all these levies on these August elections when there's nothing else on the ballot and the turnout is like 8%. So what do? They just have the teachers and the parents go vote and they win. This is your chance to do that now with your favorite candidate. This is your chance, okay? So take advantage of the opportunity and we'll see what happens. I don't like any of this at all, but Governor DeWine's illegal actions caused this to happen, and the legislature couldn't get out of their own way if their life depended on it. Call your legislators and tell them that you want to stop Governor DeWine from doing any more illegal acts, and you don't want to extend the shutdown of business in Ohio past April 6th. Period. That's your assignment for this week. That's what I need you to do to protect all of our individual freedom and liberty and prosperity. Okay? We're going to wrap up the radio show now. Those of you who want to watch the rest of the show, go to wethepeopleconvention.org and pick up the rest of the podcast, and we'll see you on the other side. You're listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion radio broadcasts and podcasts, and I'm Tom Zawistowski, and I'm really glad you joined me today. The We the People Convention News and Opinion radio program is paid for by donors like you. You can donate to the We the People Convention and support our cause by going to wethepeopleconvention.org or by sending your check in any amount to We the People Convention, P.O. Box 6211, Akron, Ohio 44312.
The Buckeye Institute was founded in 1989, and we're the longest-serving free market think tank in the state of Ohio. My goal is removing barriers to prosperity that have been put in place by government. We want for Ohio to be the freest and most prosperous state in the country.
The Buckeye Institute is a source of common sense ideas that will have an impact on the nation as well as the state of Ohio.
All right, and we're back for the podcast, and I appreciate you sticking with me. I'm pretty tired. Been working really hard. There's just me, running these videos and editing. Is the video I put out with Dr. Burks and saying that Dr. Acton was totally wrong about what she's telling Governor DeWine. That video took almost 3 hours for me to put that together. Had to listen to the whole DeWine press conference and the whole Trump press conference to find those clips, to put that coherent, effective video together, and it just blew up. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of people viewing it literally as I speak to you right now. Okay, so go to wethepeopleconvention.org and watch it if you haven't seen it, and then share it with people so you can show them that Governor DeWine's been acting on bad information, and we need to stop what he's doing and reconsider, because there's all kinds of evidence now that even this social distancing doesn't work. I don't know if you read about the fact that Sweden is doing nothing. Everybody talks about, the Nordic countries, they're the greatest, they're socialists, and they're not socialists, right? But they're the smartest and best life and all that. Yeah, they're not even closing schools. They don't think there's any need to do that at all. So we're going to find out. That's going to be a nice test, aren't they? How bad it is when you don't do all this social distancing and shutting down everything. Because, folks, I'm just telling you, it's years from now, this will be documented as the biggest disaster, man-made disaster, perhaps in medical history. It's just unbelievable. But now I want to talk to you about something that's real important. I kept it out of the radio show because I wanted to talk to more of the diehard people who listen to the podcast. I'm pretty disturbed by the way people have acted here in Ohio, particularly, and around the country. Because I saw people just give up their liberty just simply because they were afraid. And you all know the phrase, right? Those who will trade, liberty for temporary security will have neither. Well, you guys, too many of you, just believed everything that they said, didn't question anything. And they just said, well, kids got to stay home. Okay. And, you can't have daycare. Okay. And now we're going to close restaurants and bars. Okay. And now you say, we're going to, shut down non-essential businesses. Okay. And now you got to stay in your house. Oh, okay. Without even questioning them, without even saying, well, give me your reason. Help me understand. How many businesses you're closing? How come you didn't ask those questions? How come the media didn't ask any of those questions? How come the legislature didn't ask any of those questions? All of us in the Tea Party movement and in the Second Amendment movement who talk about when they come to take my guns, we're going to have a gunfight. We're going to shoot it out. Yeah, we just saw that you're not going to shoot it out. We just saw you're going to give your gun away because they lied to you and you bought the lie and you didn't read the Constitution and you didn't go to court and say, these are our rights. We got a serious problem. We got to figure out what the heck's going on here. Because we say we're going to fight for our individual freedom and liberty and prosperity, but we didn't, did we? And we almost lost it, folks. We almost lost our country because not enough people stood up and said, no, you don't rule over me. You work for me. We need to be very concerned about what we just witnessed. And we need to do some soul searching. I just think, I understand you're afraid. I understand that you want to trust doctors. I understand that you want to trust experts. But our life experience shows that you can't. Any one of you that has had a medical issue, any one of you know that you have to be your own doctor. How many people do you know, friends and relatives, who got killed at the hospital? They didn't get saved. How many times have you asked questions and forced them to tell you answers and it saved your life? So why did you accept this nonsense? Learn from our mistakes. We need to build a movement here where we stop this stuff. We got an election to win. And we're going to have people listen to the show and donating the show so that we can build the effort to win this election. Because we just saw what they'll do to win, right? Anything. They'll let millions of people die if you have to. They'll at least use propaganda to scare you. Learn from this experience. Because this is how they're going to take our guns, and when they take our guns, it's over. And so think about this. Think if Hillary Clinton was president and this happened. You think you'd have a gun? Not a chance. Not a chance. So it's not one-sided. I posted an article on the website on WeThePeopleConvention.org that was very interesting. And no one really paid attention to it because it was kind of off topic. But this lefty guy wrote for Bloomberg an article and said the coronavirus killed the progressive left. And that's on our website. And you can go read the whole article. But here's basically what he said. Who's going to be for open borders when they now see that it's a way to transmit diseases? Nobody. Nobody. This lefty was bemoaning the fact, who's going to fight climate change when we can't even get people to stand 6 feet apart to save their own life? Nobody, right? Nobody. Who's going to want big government when we saw the government healthcare of Italy and France collapse like a folding chair under this virus? Which again will prove isn't even as bad as a regular flu, folks. Okay? I'll just give you a statistic to prove that. Again, I try never to tell you anything that I can't prove, right? So New York City, well, I don't know, what's the number? They got, 50,000 cases of coronavirus right now. You know how many cases of regular flu they already have had in New York City? 131,000. perspective, like I talked to you about in the beginning of the show. But the progressive left has taken a huge hit because big government doesn't work. Who screwed this up? Who's responsible mostly? Not Donald Trump. Donald Trump bailed us out. The CDC was a disaster. These people who've been on government payroll for their entire lives make way more than you and I. They have their budget increased every year, even when they try to say Trump cut their budget and did this. Nothing of the sort happened. They've always got their money. And when the bell rang, they were nowhere to be found. They were grossly incompetent. They were negligent. They were late to the party. And only because Trump got private industry involved did we bail ourselves out. That's the Democrat socialist healthcare they're trying to stick you with. Wake up and understand that it's all about liberty. It's control. They want to give you government healthcare and kill all private healthcare so you depend on them for your life. Do you get it? You never want that to happen. You would better die fighting with your gun to fight against government healthcare than to accept it, because you just saw how dangerous these people are. Do not forget, if you have a son or a daughter, a father, an uncle, a mother, an aunt, a niece, who had a business, a haircut place, a nail place, a garage, whatever it is, a lawn care place, government just took their business away. Government did. They did this. And then we're going to ask them to fix it? Yeah, you're going to get a piece of garbage bailout bill like they just gave us, which is the money is for them, not for us. That's why we fight to limit government in the Tea Party at the WeThePeopleConvention.org. That's why we do what we do. Okay, going to take another break, and then we're going to come back and wrap this up. You're listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion radio show and podcast, and I'm Tom Zawistowski.
This is Jordan Seculo with the American Center for Law and Justice. At the ACLJ, we are committed to fighting the deep state and protecting freedom, the right to life, religious liberty, and fighting for the Constitution. The ACLJ has experienced tremendous success in litigating cases at all levels of the judiciary, from the federal district court level to the Supreme Court of the United States. We have offices in Washington, D.C., Jerusalem, and all around the world. You can find out more about the ACLJ and join us by visiting aclj.org.
Did you know that the Right to Life Action Coalition of Ohio is the largest statewide life group in the state? Are you tired of the compromised approach to pro-life legislation that has been the status quo for far too long? Since 2017, the efforts of the Right to Life Action Coalition of Ohio has changed that approach, closing loopholes and making pro-life laws enforceable. Visit rtlaohio.org or call 440-668-4049 for details. The Right to Life Action Coalition of Ohio, the proven place to go for lasting pro-life.
All right, we're back for our final segment of this week's show. I just wanted to say that, listen, while we don't agree with us being here, we're here. The president has to work his way out of this politically. He's talking Easter. We're pushing, and I'll probably call upon you this coming week to push the president to start opening up the country, because if you notice what he's saying, he's talking about, listen, these places that don't have any cases out in the Midwest, why are they closed? So what we're hoping is to start opening some things this week, even with the point of having everything open on Easter, right? And a friend of mine texted it'd be a true resurrection of our country on Easter. It would be very prophetic. It'd be very great idea. So we don't like that we're here, but while we're here, we're going to do the best we can, right? And so the president has his 15 days to slow the spread. That ends on Monday, March 30th. And so it's real simple. Let's do the best we can. That's what Americans do. So if you feel sick, stay at home. If you have children that are sick, keep them at home. If someone in your household is tested positive, keep the entire household at home. Don't go to work. Don't go to school. Don't do anything like that. If you're an older person, stay at home. Stay away from the crowd. It's really not that hard. My wife and I have been doing it. It's pretty easy, actually. And if you're a person with serious underlying conditions, just know that you're really susceptible to this. It is dangerous. I'm not saying it's not dangerous. I'm just saying that when we go back to work, we could do some common sense things. Like, for instance, the nursing homes need to be locked down. There's some huge percentage of the people dying from this are in the nursing homes. Let's keep them safe, right? I got no problem if we open up and they still have to keep taking your temperature when you come to work. Or even if we went to a restaurant and they had to take my temperature, and if I had a temperature, they wouldn't let me in the restaurant. That's not an intrusion on me, because the restaurant is still open and they're still getting paid. And I can take home takeout, right? Those are common sense things that Governor DeWine and the rest of these governors haven't done, okay? So if you say everybody goes back to work, but people who are 65 or older, that means almost everybody's back to work, right? Let's make the best of a bad situation, because that's what Americans do. Let's get back to work sooner than later, because this will hurt us in the election if it goes too long. Let's defend ourselves against government overreach and push back at every level. You know it. It worked. I just showed you that on Monday, your calls helped convince President Trump to pivot. Okay? Your calls to the legislature is going to help get them to do their job. Call your legislators this week and demand that they get in session and they take control and they make sure this isn't extended. They'll listen because they're afraid of you. But they're only afraid of you if you call and you get others to call. So that's all I really got to say for this week. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I hope that you learned some things. I hope that you got some behind the scenes information. I hope that you learned once again that I will never ask you to do anything that isn't worth doing. I will never waste your time, effort, or money. I hope you will tell other people about the podcast. I hope you will share it when I post it on Facebook and Twitter and stuff. At We the People Convention on Facebook. Almost nobody sees it. I'll do a post, and I'll have 800 people look at that post. I post the radio show and the podcast. I get like 60 people. Share it, please. Get the word out. We've got to build our army. All right? We got to build our army. And then we'll be back again next week, because we're going to fight to the death to defend this country, you and I. We are not going to let anybody take away this amazing country we've got that 1 million people have fought and died for to preserve. We ain't let it go on our watch. You've been listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion Podcast, and I'm Tom Zawistowski.